A woman walks into the courthouse, looking around like she is searching for something. She glances at the directory on the wall, checking the courtroom numbers. Before she can take another step, a security guard steps in front of her, blocking her path. "Excuse me, ma'am. Courtrooms aren't open for the public right now," he says, his tone firm, dismissive. She looks up at him, calm but confused. He cuts her off before she can finish. "If you're looking for a public defender or need to reschedule a case, you should go downstairs. This is for legal personnel only. Other people pass without being questioned but him." He singles her out. What he does not know is that in a few minutes she will take a seat in the one place he never expected. And when that happens, his entire world will come crashing down. Before we continue the story, let us know, where are you watching from? The woman takes a slow breath, steadying herself. She is not lost. She knows exactly where she needs to go. But the security guard does not believe that. He stares at her like she is in the wrong place, like she does not belong. "Ma'am, this area is restricted," he repeats. His voice is flat, uninterested. He does not ask her what she needs, does not even consider the possibility that she has a legitimate reason to be here. She studies him for a moment. He is Officer Greg Thompson, one of the longest-serving security guards at the courthouse. A man who thinks he knows everything about who comes through these doors. And in his mind, she does not fit the image of someone who should be here. He has seen judges, attorneys, and law clerks walk in without question. But they look the part. This woman, she's not in a robe, not in a suit, not carrying a briefcase. Just a simple black dress, a coat draped over her arm. That is enough for him to assume she is a defendant, maybe a witness, but nothing more. A clerk walks by. A lawyer rushes in. None of them are stopped. Only her. She lifts her chin slightly. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she says. But the security guard does not listen. He just scoffs. "You need to leave," he says again. "This isn't a place for you." She says nothing, just lets him dig his own grave, because in a few minutes he's going to wish he had treated her differently. The security guard exhales sharply, clearly irritated. "I don't think you understand, ma'am," he says, folding his arms. "This area is restricted. If you have a case, you need to wait downstairs like everyone else." The woman's expression remains calm. She meets his gaze, unshaken. "And if I don't have a case?" He lets out a dry chuckle. "Then why are you even here?" She tilts her head slightly, but before she can answer, he keeps going. "You can't just walk in here like you own the place," he says, shaking his head. "This is a courthouse, not a public library. We have rules." A few feet away, a young law clerk overhears the conversation. She glances up from her paperwork, frowning slightly. She recognizes the woman's face, but stays quiet, unsure if she should step in. The guard, completely unaware, continues. "Now, do you need directions to the public defender's office, or are you just lost?" The woman raises an eyebrow. "Do I look lost to you?" He sighs. "Lady, I don't have time for this. You need to step back and let people through. We have actual business to handle here." A few other courthouse employees watch the interaction out of the corners of their eyes. None of them say a word. The guard shakes his head. "You know, this happens all the time," he mutters. "People thinking they can just stroll in here, demanding to be somewhere they shouldn't." She stays silent. He smirks. "You wouldn't believe how many times I have to turn people like you away." She exhales slowly. "People like you." Now he has said too much. The law clerk, standing nearby, stiffens. She knows this guard has no idea who he is talking to. The woman lifts her chin. "So tell me," she says, her voice smooth, steady. "Who exactly do you think I am?" The security guard lets out another scoff, eyeing her up and down. "I don't know, but I know you're not supposed to be back here." The law clerk finally clears her throat. She steps forward, her voice hesitant but firm. Officer Thompson?" The guard doesn't even glance at her. "What?" The clerk swallows. "You might want to—" Before she can finish, a door at the end of the hall swings open. A bailiff steps into the corridor. His eyes sweep across the room before landing on the woman. Instantly, his expression shifts into one of recognition and urgency. "Your Honor," the bailiff calls out, "we've been waiting for you." Silence. The entire lobby freezes. The security guard's smirk disappears. His arms drop to his sides. His breath catches in his throat. "Wait, what?" he mutters. The woman doesn't say a word. She just watches as the realization slams into him like a train. Whispers spread through the room. "Your Honor?" someone murmurs. "Is she—" The bailiff continues. "Judge Carter, the courtroom is ready for you." And just like that, the entire dynamic in the courthouse shifts. The security guard stares at her, his mind racing, his confidence shattered. This woman, the one he just dismissed, questioned, and spoke down to, is not just anyone. She is Judge Olivia Carter, one of the most respected judges in the city. And today, he tried to kick her out of her own courthouse. The security guard stands frozen, staring at her as if his brain refuses to process what just happened. His mouth opens slightly, but no words come out. "Judge, Your Honor." His face turns pale. Just seconds ago, he was ready to force her out, treating her like she did not belong. Now, the truth hangs in the air, suffocating him. The law clerk shifts awkwardly. A few other courthouse employees glance at each other, their faces uneasy. No one steps forward to help him. He is on his own. The woman, Judge Olivia Carter, does not look angry. She does not yell, does not humiliate him like he humiliated her. She simply raises an eyebrow, waiting for him to find his words. But he cannot. The bailiff approaches her, offering a respectful nod. "Your Honor, we're ready to begin the morning hearings." She does not take her eyes off the security guard. Finally, after a long silence, he stammers, I didn't realize." The entire courthouse seems to be watching now. People in the lobby, attorneys passing by, even a few defendants waiting for their hearings. Everyone wants to see what happens next. Judge Carter's voice is steady. "Didn't realize what, Officer Thompson?" He blinks rapidly. I didn't know who you were." A few whispers ripple through the room. Some of the employees shake their heads, clearly embarrassed for him. Judge Carter tilts her head slightly. "So, let me understand. If I were someone else, someone you considered important, you would have treated me differently." He swallows hard. No, Your Honor, that's not what I meant." She does not break eye contact. "Then what did you mean?" More silence. The weight of his own actions is crashing down on him. A voice from behind them cuts through the tension. "Your Honor, I apologize for the delay." Another judge, an older man in a robe, steps into the hallway. He glances between Judge Carter and the security guard, immediately sensing the tension. "Is everything all right?" She finally shifts her gaze away from the guard, offering the other judge a polite nod. "Yes," she says calmly. "I was just being educated on the courthouse rules." The older judge frowns. His eyes land on the security guard, who looks like he wants to disappear into the floor. The judge exhales sharply. "Officer Thompson," he says, his voice sharp, "is this how you conduct yourself?" The security guard's hands tighten into fists. He shakes his head quickly. "No, sir. I was just trying to follow protocol." The older judge's jaw tightens. "Then perhaps you should familiarize yourself with who works in this courthouse." The security guard nods quickly. Yes, sir. Judge Carter watches him carefully. Tell me, Officer Thompson, how many others have you treated this way? His eyes flicker with something. Guilt, embarrassment, maybe even fear. He knows this is not the first time, but he also knows there is no good answer to her question. The law clerk, who has been silent this whole time, finally speaks up. Her voice is soft but firm. It happens a lot, Your Honor. More whispers. The security guard stiffens. His jaw clenches, but he does not argue. He knows it is true. Judge Carter nods slightly. Thank you, she says to the clerk. Then she looks back at Officer Thompson. You assumed I was in the wrong place, and because of that, you dismissed me without even listening. What if I had been someone else? What if I had been a witness, a juror, a victim of a crime? The question lingers in the air. The security guard lowers his gaze. I'm sorry, Your Honor, he mumbles. Judge Carter watches him for a moment longer. Then she straightens her shoulders. I suggest you take this experience as a lesson. His head snaps up. Her voice remains even. Because the next time someone reports unfair treatment in this courthouse, I will make sure it is fully addressed. The meaning is clear. This is his warning. His head dips. Yes, Your Honor. Without another word, she turns and walks toward the courtroom doors. The bailiff follows her. The attorneys bow their heads slightly as she passes. And Officer Thompson? He does not move. He stands there, still processing the fact that today he was the one being judged. Officer Thompson stands still, his face blank, his breathing uneven. His brain struggles to process what just happened. The woman he just dismissed. The woman he barely let speak. The woman he assumed did not belong. She's not just anyone. She is Judge Olivia Carter. And now, everyone in the courthouse knows it. The law clerk shifts awkwardly at her desk. She witnessed everything, the way Thompson dismissed Judge Carter without a second thought, the way he assumed she had no business being here. Now, the entire courthouse watches as the reality of his mistake sets in. Thompson tries to recover. His mouth opens slightly, but no words come out. Judge Carter is still standing at the entrance of the courtroom, her robe now resting over her arm. She watches him, calm and unreadable. The silence is unbearable. Thompson swallows hard. His voice is weaker now, no longer filled with arrogance. Your Honor, He stops. What can he say? What excuse would be good enough? The older judge, who had walked in moments earlier, crosses his arms. His face is unreadable, but his eyes say it all. Disappointment. How long have you worked in this courthouse, Officer Thompson? The older judge asks. Thompson hesitates. 15 years, sir. The older judge exhales, shaking his head. And, in 15 years, you never once thought to question how you decide who belongs. Thompson opens his mouth, but he knows the answer. And worse, so does everyone else. He hears the murmurs, the whispers. I knew she looked familiar. He really thought he could stop a judge from entering her own courtroom. Imagine how many times this has happened before. Thompson clenches his jaw. His eyes dart toward Judge Carter, but she does not look angry. She does not need to be. Her silence is more powerful than anything she could say. She tilts her head slightly, studying him. Then finally, she speaks. Officer Thompson, she says evenly, tell me, how many others have you treated this way? Thompson's stomach twists, because he knows the answer, and so does everyone else. He swallows, struggling for words. I didn't mean... She lifts a hand, stopping him. Meaning doesn't change impact. His breath catches. She lets the words settle before continuing. If I had been someone else today, someone without authority, how would this have ended? He does not answer, because they both know. If she had been a defendant, a juror, or just an ordinary citizen, would he have listened? Or would he have dismissed them just as quickly? She holds his gaze. Respect should not be given based on assumption, Officer Thompson. The courthouse is silent. She adjusts her robe, then turns, heading toward the courtroom doors. The bailiff follows her, opening them as she enters. The moment she steps inside, the attorneys rise to their feet out of respect. The clerks prepare their notes. The gallery sits up straighter. Judge Carter takes her seat at the bench. And outside, in the hallway, Officer Thompson finally understands. Today, he was the one who didn't belong. The doors to the courtroom shut behind Judge Carter, but the weight of what just happened lingers in the hallway. The murmurs have quieted, but the tension remains thick. Officer Thompson has not moved. His chest feels tight, his legs feel heavy, and for the first time in years, he feels truly exposed. He has spent 15 years working security in this courthouse, but today he is the one who has been judged. He glances around, realizing that no one is defending him. The law clerk, who had tried to warn him, is already back at her desk, her face neutral. A few attorneys pass by, pretending not to have seen what happened. Other employees exchange glances, their eyes filled with something between disbelief and quiet satisfaction, because today, the man who always assumed authority was put in his place. Thompson swallows hard and turns to the older judge still watching him. "Sir, The judge lifts a hand, stopping him. "Do not make excuses." Thompson's jaw tightens. "I have seen your type before," the judge continues. "Men who think their position gives them the right to decide who matters and who does not." Thompson looks away, shame creeping up his spine. "I wasn't trying to—" "You were," the judge says simply, "and you got caught." The words land heavier than he expects. He hears more whispers behind him. "I always knew he had an attitude." But stopping a judge from entering her own courtroom. Imagine how many people he's treated like that before. Thompson's hands clench at his sides. The weight of those whispers stings because they are right. How many others had he dismissed just as quickly? How many times had he waved someone off, assuming they did not belong, just because they did not look the part? The older judge takes a step closer. "Tell me, Officer Thompson," he says, "what kind of man do you want to be?" Thompson blinks. The judge's words echo in his head. He had spent years believing that authority meant control, that his job was to decide who had access and who did not. But today, his authority had meant nothing. Today, he was the one left standing in silence while a room full of people judged him. And the worst part, he deserved it. He exhales sharply, finally meeting the older judge's eyes. I need to do better." The older judge studies him for a moment before nodding. "Yes, you do." Then, without another word, he turns and walks away, leaving Thompson standing there. For the first time in a long time, Thompson feels small in this courthouse. He glances back toward the courtroom doors, knowing that beyond them, Judge Carter has already moved on. She has not punished him. She has not humiliated him. She simply let him face the truth. And somehow, that feels worse than any punishment could. Inside the courtroom, Judge Carter sits at the bench adjusting her robe. The attorneys rise to their feet as she enters, waiting for her nod before sitting. The clerk calls the first case. The gallery settles in silence. It is business as usual. She does not mention what happened outside. She does not need to. Because the people who witnessed it, they will remember. Not because of anger, not because of embarrassment, but because they saw what happens when power is built on assumption instead of respect. Now, think about yourself. If you were there today, what would you have done? Would you have spoken up? Would you have watched in silence? Or would you have been just like Officer Thompson? Be honest. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been judged unfairly because of how you look? Tell your story. And before you go, remember this. Real power isn't about authority. It's about how you treat people when you think no one is watching.